reverse osmosis?
Yes, reverse osmosis is okay water.
Okay.
Yeah. It's ozonated and distilled that we want to stay away from in tap water. Even really good well water, the reason we don't use well water is because it's coming through pipes and the actual metal strips the ions that are in the water out of it, so the water is nice living spring water. So that's why we always choose to use spring water.
So what about purified tap water?
No, spring water is what's recommended from the source.
Okay, but spring water from the source is also purified sometimes.
Yep,
Most of the
sometimes.
time.
I'm not a water scientist. I just know that the formulas are supposed to be blended in spring water, and they work when they are.
Can you rest assured that when you buy bottled water in the store that says spring water, it's actually spring water?
I think the best thing if you're going to buy spring water is look for bottled at the source. I think that's going to be your best spring water, because that's saying facility is right over the spring, they're not putting it in a truck, they're not shipping it somewhere else, because then they have to go through and clean the water. The formulas are...
How many of you familiar with the brand Fiji? The Fiji water comes from Fiji and Mount Lidavidu or wherever, where the cleanest water comes right from the spring.
I had some of that last year.
Crystal Guys is also pretty good water too.
Have you heard of Merlin water? What about Merlin
I
water?
have not heard of Merlin water.
Okay.
And I got this right here in Tahoe.
Getting back, a little bit of history on myself. I say my education started in about 1993 as I was traveling around the country following a very good friend of mine, Jerry Garcia. I learned the very most important lesson in my life. I learned what unconditional love is all about, and that it's a frequency, and we can choose to reside in it, or we can choose not to. And that's really the foundation of my education. From there, I studied a lot of metaphysical stuff. I studied a lot of energy work. I studied with a couple different shamans and started working with troubled youth, leading wilderness trips in the Cascades in the winter with chemically dependent adolescents, and then down in Arizona with a program called Vision Quest, working with adjudicated youth, also doing 16-day wilderness trips. From there, I got a little burnt out, and I took a break and went up to Washington. And always wanted to work at a ski resort, so I worked up at Mount Baker and taught snowboarding and skiing and just had a lot of fun doing it. My path always kept calling me back to the work, just presence and spirit. And all my education was very metaphysical. I studied yoga, I studied Kundalini yoga, I studied several forms of yoga, meditation. I worked a lot with crystals, I did a lot of chakra balancing work. And it finally just came time where I said, I get to learn the body. I get to learn the bones, the muscles, the structures, all of the infrastructures of the body. So I looked around at schools, and I really didn't want to go to medical school because I didn't believe what they were doing was actually helping people to the best of their ability. So I looked around and I found a school called the Heartwood Institute. Heartwood Institute is in Northern California, and it's a holistic healing institute. I started studying with a man by the name of Paul Pitchford. You may have heard of him. He wrote a book called Healing Through Whole Foods. Traditional Chinese medicine, whole food nutrition, barefoot Zen shiatsu. Also at Heartwood I studied all my anatomy, physiology, body systems, kinesiology, and pathology. I also studied massage, deep tissue massage, orthopedic massage. Studied with an amazing woman named Mimi Palaire, craniosacral therapy. Met a really amazing doctor at the school and started privately studying naturopathy, essential oils, internal cleansing, hydrocolon therapy. And this just got me really into studying alternative medicine. Started studying chelation therapy, ozone therapy, hydrogen peroxide therapy. And what I realized was a lot of stuff that's very, very good for us has been banned in this country in particular, not because it's not safe and good, but because it's not as profitable as the current industry that's going on. Those studies found me to live blood cell analysis or dark field blood microscopy. And this system really impressed me because it's the only blood analysis that views the blood live. When you shine a light through blood, you can't see a thing, which is why they take a lot of blood and they use different chemicals and dyes to stain different things in the blood, and then they shine a light through it. Well, when they do your standard blood test, they never really realize all the different microorganisms that are found in the blood. And what a zoologist in Germany discovered back in the 60s was if you illuminate the blood from the sides onto a dark background, You actually light up all the cell walls of your erythrocytes and leukocytes and all the living colloids in your blood. These are your red blood cells, your white blood cells, and the different microorganisms that are found in all mammals. What he realized is that the same microorganism, there's one that's called Mycosis ramosus freshen. He's responsible, or she is responsible, for helping your platelets clot your blood when you have a cut. Without this microorganism, we would bleed to death. It's found in all mammals. This same microorganism also decomposes us when we die. It actually goes through phlegmoric changes, much like a tadpole turning into a frog. This microorganism goes through phlegmoric changes and has the ability to live synergistically with us and also start to live parasitically off of us. That's generally based on the pH of the body. Standard American diet is very, very acidic. Meat is acidic, dairy is acidic, coffee is acidic, alcohol is acidic. And so we throw off our pH. So we throw off these microorganisms that are used to be living synergistically with the body, and they start to progress into their next phases. I can kind of show you what this looks like. As they progress, they start to have a parasympathetic relationship with the body versus a synergistic. Once they start progressing, they feed off your proteins. And their waste that they excrete is further acidic, so it just increases the proliferation of them. When in the dark field, what these microorganisms look like when they're in their simplest form is basically these little tiny dots. They're much smaller than a living cell. They can get into slightly bigger, and then they can actually get into a size like this. Just to give you a comparison, a red blood cell is about that size. The smallest living thing in the body is not the cell. That's an incorrect statement. The smallest living thing in the body is different microorganisms. They're called several different things. Somids, protoliths, thesolids. And when we see them in this size range, they're still living synergistically with the body. Once we see them in this size range, they're just starting to live parasitically off the body. This is what's called a symbiotic. From there, they can get into a form that's called phyla, or fiber. And it basically looks like these lines. And anytime we see arthritic conditions, we always see overgrowth in the form of fiber in the body. From there, they can get into another, and this is a bacterial phase. This is all the same microorganism, by the way. From fiber, they can get into a form that's called chondrites. Chondrites look like basically these little tiny worms. And what they like to do is wrap around the cell wall and start to feed off it. So when we see cells that are out of shape, we know that there's chondrites feeding off of the cell walls. From there, they can actually enter inside the cell and start to parasitize your red blood cells. From there, they increase and they can turn into a fungal form, which is called an acid. And an acid looks a lot like a chondrite, but it's much thicker. And it'll actually open up and release spores.
Something like sickle cell anemia also tied in with this? I'm just looking at that shape of the cell.
To be honest with you, there's over 6,000 diseases, and I find it a waste of my time to study all of them.
Right.
What I study is a system of how to assess the body and bring the body back to homeostasis. So I really don't know a lot of specialty diseases because there's so many that, for me, it seemed like a waste of time to study individuals. It made more sense to me to study a system of assessment and how to bring the body back into balance. So I don't know the answer to that question. From acids, they can get into further fungal forms. And this is basically the polymorphic cycle of microorganisms. And I'll show you all this in the blood. And through the dark field, it's very, very easy to see what phase of existence these microorganisms are in and to what level. It's also very easy to see how much cellular oxygenation is in the body. And let me just start off by saying everything that I'm saying is a matter of opinion, so I'm protected by my First Amendment right. Just want to put that out there.
Does the cell actually then collapse and die when it gets to that last stage?
No, these are not cells.
No, I know, but you said they go inside and parasitize the cells. Do the cells actually collapse and die at some point?
No, they'll actually stay as a host for these microorganisms. And what they'll do is they'll actually start to pull the cells together on top of each other. Okay, your red blood cells are these really neat things. They're actually dome-shaped, actually concave in the middle. And your red blood cells are responsible for carrying all your oxygen, your nutrients, and your CO2 in and out of your tissues. They do that on their surface area. The reason God made them concave is because it creates more surface area for them to carry oxygen. When we start to get severe bacterial overgrowths that are parasitizing the cells, they'll start to pull the cells on top of each other. It's one thing if they're just touching. 99% of their surface area is still open. It's another thing when they start to get on top of each other like this. You can imagine how much of the surface area gets reduced. Now, cancer is not rocket science. When a cell only reaches 40% of its oxygen needs, the cell has two choices. One is to die and the other is to mutate. If it chooses mutation, it produces anaerobically, without oxygen. That's the beginning of cancer. It's very easy to see your cellular oxygenation levels in the microscope because you can see the amount of surface area around your red blood cells. For me, this system is really amazing because you can get an initial. Me as a 25-year-old, when I got out in the field practitioner, my hardest thing was gaining the trust of my clients. How do I know this 25-year-old kid who's not an MD is telling me the truth? This system takes all the guesswork out. I'm not guessing if you have fungal overgrowth. I'm not guessing if you have candida, bacterial overgrowth, parasites. I'm not guessing on your cellular oxygenation. You can see it, you can film it, we can document it. As I get people on a program, whether they're conscious of what's going on or not, most people will feel it, but if people don't, then come back, we can look at their blood. We have an initial point, we have a 3-week, a 6-week, a 9-week, and you can actually see the progression. So for me, it takes the guesswork of what's going on in the body, and it proves what I'm saying is reality instead of there being this question, well, how do I know if he's telling me this is true? The other thing it does is it allows people to actually see what's going on inside them. It's an amazing educational tool. I don't believe in the paradigm of, what's wrong with me? I'm sick, doc, can you fix me? What I like to do is to help my clients understand A, where they're at, B, where they want to be, and the steps so they can get there themselves. And also, what also is very important is, what were the steps that got them there? What are the major stressors that got them to the current condition? Because we can clean up what we see, but if we don't deal with any of the stressors, we're bound to get back there. And this system is very, very good at that. My very first experience with Perfect Science was with a company called Full Circle Technologies. And they asked me to come to a conference and just to do my blood cell analysis. They said, we'd prefer it if you didn't recommend any of your remedies, and we won't ask you for any of the money that you make. So I said, sure. And I went up to Mount Shasta, and I spoke. And during the conference, someone said, hey, can we do a before and after? And I had filmed a woman's blood. This is I filmed a woman's blood in the morning, and this woman had a history of breast cancer. They had said they got rid of all the cancer, and due to her cellular oxygenation, it was coming right back if it wasn't already, whether it was going to show up in the breast or somewhere else. The cellular oxygenation was not very good. So they said, well, the other beautiful part about this equipment is you can take a remedy and actually see the results within 20 minutes. And that's very helpful. So I looked at this woman's blood, and during the conference they said, well, can we do a test with the formula? Can we see what the formula has done to someone's blood 20 minutes after she had done it? So I said, sure. So I already had this woman's blood, and it was just a beautiful example. So this is initially what her blood looked like. And this should slow down. And as you can see, her cellular oxygenation is very horrible. There's just, all her cells are clumped up on top of each other. It's full of bacterial overgrowth. There's actually a lot of fungal overgrowth inside there as well. Now here's a really good example. Pause it. That's a horrible pause. As you can see, some of these cells aren't perfectly round. They have chondrites wrapped around them, and sometimes you can actually see them sticking out. Now this is blood breaking down, but we'll get back into the center of it. Her blood is sort of a mess. And